First off, I just wanted to say I absolutely love The Cut. It wasn't a film that I was expecting, and I think that's why I loved it so much.
Haha, good, thank you. That's sweet.
So, can you explain how you managed to film a boxing movie without having boxing be at the forefront?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was looking to do a boxing movie, and I'm a big fan of boxing movies. Um, and you know, Raging Bull and the Rocky franchise and Creed, and I don't know, I just, obviously you can either do those kind of stories or you can do like the real life character stories, like, Southpaw or was that or The Fighter is the real life story. But and even in some respect, Raging Bull is based on Rocky Marciano, isn't it? And then but anyway, so I wasn't sure really what it was I wanted to do. And then I read this script and I thought, this is a really interesting take on a boxing movie. And it was the process of getting to the ring, which I hadn't really seen before. And I thought it felt fresh and felt like there was a place for that within the genre of or subgenre of boxing movies.
No, I agree. It's definitely something we haven't seen before, but it's something that a lot of athletes have felt getting to that
Yeah.
point.
I mean, not even athletes. I mean, eating disorders, I mean, it's rife.
Mm.
And, so many people suffer from it and are a victim of it. And it's, it's a lot of it is obviously, people trying to deal with certain issues that they've had or the way that they see themselves or um, so yeah, I think it's just an important comment on that, and especially you don't often see it from a male perspective either. But there are a lot of guys out there that purge themselves because of body issues and stuff like that. So and especially combining it with the fact that it's wrapped up in something that is to do with his mother and the sort of time when he was, a young lad, and obviously he's dealing with the emotional psyche of those issues that happened to him in a sport that requires you to be a certain weight. It's you can see why all of it starts to sort of fall apart for him.
And everything was told in an almost poetic way. Um, can you explain a little bit about your approach to weaving in the backstory and having like the overlapping of sounds and dialogue and stuff?
Um, yeah, I mean, the backstory was a really interesting process. I mean, even the non-spoken backstory, especially like with Caitlin, the character of Caitlin played by Katrina Balfe, that we spoke so long, myself and Katrina and Orlando about their relationship and about who they were and what happened to them and where they were going and how they live and I think the time that we spent together really created an interesting backstory that's really lived in, feels lived in. It's not expositional in any way. Um, you know, some of the conversations that you're hearing, you're like, wait, what? Like you're picking up info that is just like, like, do you know what the boys downstairs call you? It was a just a really interesting line that John threw at her, and it, it obviously triggered that kind of reaction, but Ed was ready to step in for her and defend her, and she was like, he's not worth it, but what was interesting is like, what do the boys downstairs call her? So there was this interesting idea and process of creating characters that have a life before we met them without, over explaining what that life was. Um, and I think a lot of that just comes from those lines and, like you say, sound design, sound overlap, memory, flashbacks of certain things that we remember in our past that come into our haunt our present and dictate sometimes our future.
Um, Kind of building off of that, Orlando Bloom was absolutely incredible. I completely forgot that that was him in the role. Um, because like just like the acting and then he physically looked different. So what was it about him that really made him become the boxer?
Well, I mean, he's a good-looking lad normally, and we all know him from these sort of big franchise movies, and when I first spoke to him about this part, it was a really, obviously, a very gritty script, very dark, um, and I think he just embraced it, full on. He wanted to go head on into it, and he wanted to just take the brakes off and just, swing for the fences. And I think my only concern, I mean, I wasn't concerned about his commitment to do that or even the physical aspects of the role that would require him to do some crazy, crazy weight loss but it was more the look, the physical look. Like I didn't buy him looking like a boxer, especially one that was on the end of his career and not the beginning. So mm, I spoke to Mark Coullier about how we could change his look subtly, and Mark did a head cast and then designed like nose pieces in various degrees, from subtle to very, very boxerish. And then he designed kind of eyelids that kind of droops, and then he had these cauliflower ears that kind of went on, and then Orlando kind of cut his hair. Like we were actually on a Zoom one night, and he was like, "Oh, I'm with the hairdresser. We're going to cut my hair for the part." And I was like, "You sure you want to do it now?" And he was like, "Yeah." I imagine he cuts it himself, and he sort of went, zzz, zzz, and he sort of started doing it, and and then and he said, and I think a little goatee and stuff, and then I think if we plump up my face a bit, and then suddenly when we had the nose and the ears and the things, suddenly just it changed, and he looked like a fighter, and he carried himself like a fighter. He was like tightly coiled. So yeah, it was an amazing transformation, and I think his performance is just um is beautiful.
It really is. Um, why does his character not have a name? He's just referred to as boxer.
Yeah, we just didn't bother with a name. I think, just keep him generic, any boxer. Um, I mean, I think that actually gets more comment than we thought about it. To be honest with you, we didn't really think anything about it, but yeah, I guess that was it.
Great. And my final question is, what do you hope people take away from watching the cut?
Well, it's a pretty grueling movie in some respects, but also it's quite a gentle movie in other respects. And I quite like the moments of quietness that him and Caitlin have in the madness of everything that happens. And I think, it's often those moments that are the most important. And I think ultimately it's about someone who's learning to ask for help, you know. And I think we all need help sometimes, and sometimes we stand in our own way of getting that, and we're not too proud or too driven to just stop and just say, actually, I've just, what I want is not necessarily what I need, you know, and what I want is actually hurting me, and and that's not a good thing because it hurts the people that I love and it hurts the people that love me, and so I think there's something quite lovely about that. It's just somebody that gets to a point in his life where he goes, actually, I don't want that success because the cost is not it's not what I'm after. It's not what makes me fulfilled. And that's why it was never really about the fight in the end. It was always about him coming to terms with why he's been doing what he's been doing to himself.
Mm. And that all makes sense as to why it's a boxing film without a lot of boxing. So,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had one question at a Q&A and they were like, why isn't there a fight at the end where he wins? And I was like, but that's not what it's about. It's that would go against the message of everything that we're trying to say, which is it's not about the fight. It's not, as she says, it's not about the winning. It's that won't calm you. You have to learn to live with the problem. That won't solve the problem. So, it's an interesting meditation on somebody that is on the road to getting themselves well after a very traumatic childhood.
um, well, again, I absolutely love the film. And I will be watching it again, and I'm looking forward to what comes next from you. But I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Beth. Very kind of you to say.